My name is Yonah Berman, as many of you know, and if not, you know now. I work at YCT. We have someone else joining us. Hold on. Thank you. We have a number of wonderful people with us today, and both within and beyond the YCT building. And I'll just say that as someone who works within the YCT building, it is a zchut to get to see what happens behind the scenes here and to see our Rabbeim, both in their teaching externally for the yeshiva as well as internally for the yeshiva, and the love that our students have for all of our faculty, but certainly for Rabbi Katz, and for the honesty and the diversity of Torah that he brings, and the wealth and breadth of knowledge that he brings is incredible. And I'll tell a personal story, which is that about 25 years ago or so, my mother, Aleha Hashalom, Rabbi Katz, you know the story, I think. My mother, Aleha Hashalom, went to a shiur that was being given in Teaneck at Mayanot, at the Mayanot Yeshiva High School for Girls. And she comes back and says, I just heard this shiur. It was great, but it was this weird guy. He's a Sadmar Chassid teaching at Mayanot. I don't understand. And here we are. He became my Rebbe at YCT. I learned how to, to the extent that I can learn Tosfos, it's because of Rabbi Katz's shiur. To the extent that I have an appreciation for a lot of other parts of Torah, and for really the amount of Torah that I don't know, it's because of Rabbi Katz and his encouragement of his students to continue to explore and to grow and to give. And so with that incredible diversity that comes from an incredible background of coming from the Satmar world, learning in brisk yeshivot along the way, and of course adopting the modern Orthodox community and loving that community. And Rabbi Katz, so I'd ask you actually, what does modern Orthodoxy mean to you? We're talking about art, but Ma'inyan Shmita Etzel Har Sinai.
Okay, thank you, Rav Yonah, for the introduction, and I will try to answer the question of why modern Orthodoxy, and in fact, not why modern Orthodoxy, but why a particular strain of within modern Orthodoxy, YCT. As you know, I grew up in Satmar, so I had all the options in the world, and I could have picked many, many, many alternatives, but I'm here because of a particular reason, and hopefully in the next 35, 40 minutes, I'll be able to explain to you why I dafka think that this place answered my spiritual and religious needs. I will just say quickly a funny story, since Rav Yonah mentioned my teaching at Mayanot. So Mayanot, which is a girls' school in Teaneck, was my first job outside of the Haredi community. I was looking to leave, and I taught in the Haredi community Daf Yomi for many years, which was a full-pay job. And then I left, and my first job was at Mayanot in Teaneck. I was working for Rebbetzin Esther Krause at the time, the wife of Rav Simcha Krause, Zechrono Livracha, and it was an incredible 70 years of learning and growing and all of that. But I had a very nice and beautiful relationship with my parents, very sweet relationship with my parents, with my father, with my mother, but I wouldn't say that they had it easy. Their Bechor, their oldest, who they had so much hopes for, left the Haredi community, and now all of a sudden, not only did he not go to YU, he went to YCT. So it was a lot of good conversations, but especially with my mother. My father is more of was more of a tamim, more of a simple person, but my mother is very, very smart, and I've had hours and hours of intellectual conversations with my mother. So you'll appreciate this one. I got my first job at Mayanot, and I come to my mom and I said, Ma, I got a job at a modern Orthodox school. And she said to me, is it co-ed? And I said, no, chas v'shalom. She was very happy. It was very good. Okay, Baruch Hashem, you're not teaching in a co-ed school. And then a few weeks later, I said to her, by the way, that Mayanot is a girls' school. And she says, oh, you lied to me. I says, no, I did not. And she says, oh, well, it's not co-ed, it's girls only. Eventually, she came to visit the school, and she came to spend some time. It was a great experience. But anyway, so without further ado, why modern Orthodox? Why open Orthodox? And let me try to kind of explain that to you. I'm a teacher and educator, so obviously I like to use texts and shiurim. So let me share with you a little bit of my thoughts. So I have to start also because it's amazing to me. It's amazing to me. We say every night at the Marif prayers, we say, when we talk about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we say, Asher bitvuna meshane itim umachlif et azmanim, right? God, with his great sophistication, manipulates time. Right. And sometimes, the way I imagine it is that, oh, something should have happened now. And God thinks, well, I'm going to move it around a little bit so that it should happen at that time. And that would be more appropriate. I don't remember exactly the date. That perhaps Noah or Ruthie would remember how long ago we scheduled this. But it's been scheduled for a couple of months. And at the time, we didn't pay attention other than to the calendar and what date and when it makes most sense to do scheduling wise. And just literally 2-3 weeks ago, when I started thinking more closely about the upcoming class, I thought, wow, it was scheduled on Parshat Vayikra. And I really feel like Parshat Vayikra just gives the shiur that I want to share with you today. So again, I'm Hasidish. I apologize. I believe that there is a rhyme and reason for everything. And I think that when Cecily scheduled this meeting, she had no idea that she's picking a divinely ordained time. So let me get started. When I say by why am I come to Chovevei, I grew up in the Haredi community, and modernity was not part and parcel of my life. It was very Haredi, and in a good way. Like I've said to many of you, I had a great experience in the Haredi community. I have zero to complain about. I grew up in an incredibly warm home. My parents were deeply loving to each other. I'm one of 7 and occasionally we would start teasing our parents and say to them, you got to tone it down, kids around the table, they're really deeply loving. And, and as a boy who liked to learn, the yeshiva was amazing. I didn't leave for some kind of, tragedy or something. I left because I was looking for a Judaism that also incorporates the larger world. In other words, a orthodoxy that's also modern. But for me, it was important that the modernity and the orthodoxy should be intertwined into one, right? It's not that I wanted to be a modern Orthodox Jew because, I wanted to be Shomer Torah Mitzvot. Oh, I also can go to the cinema. I'm a Shomer Torah Mitzvot and I can go to the Met. I wanted to be the Met part and parcel of what helps me being a Jew. And what I want to do is show you how that can happen and why, like I said, I settled here at Chovevei because I think that's a tremendous part of the ethos, the education that we educate our students, is that modern Orthodoxy does not mean a bifurcated life of, oh yeah, you're Orthodox when you're in base medrash, you're Orthodox when you daven, you're Orthodox when you learn, and then you're also modern because you something to go to the cinema, you go to the theater, you have watched sports. No. Actually, the arts and culture are brought into the base medrash to enliven and enrichen the Beit Midrash experience. So that's what I want to share with you. And I want to do that by way of starting, like I said, with this week's parsha, right? So in this week's parsha, we read about the sacrifices. And as I'm sure many of you know, the sacrifices are a complicated thing, killing animals, right? And in fact, the Rambam in his book, The Guide of the Perplexed, I have the texts in Hebrew and English, well, I'll read it in English so that it would be easier for everybody. Maimonides was so troubled by the notion of sacrifices that he had to come up with this very radical solution, so to speak, right? We'll read it a little bit. It is namely impossible. Why did God introduce sacrifices? It's just a temporary transition. Why? Because it's impossible to go suddenly from one extreme to the other. It is therefore, according to the nature of man, impossible for him suddenly to discontinue everything to which he has been accustomed. In other words, what Maimonides is making the claim, they come from Egypt. Egyptians do sacrifices. If God would get up and say, that's it, over, no more sacrifices, it would be hard to wean them from something that they've seen for so many years. So therefore, God said, you know what, let's do that slowly. We'll let them do korbanos, and it was in accordance with the wisdom and plan of God as displayed in the whole creation, that he did not command us to give up and discontinue all these manners of service, for to obey such a commandment so suddenly it would have been contrary to the nature of man, who generally cleaves to that to which he is used. And therefore, in other words, the Rambam, as we know, believes, Maimonides believes that, yeah, this was a temporary concession, but of course, going forward, we will not have a Beis Hamikdash where sacrifices are part and parcel of the process, right? As you can imagine, almost everything that Maimonides said caused a strong and fierce reaction. And Nachmanides, who was a classic, you know, person who had a conflicted relationship with Maimonides. On the one hand, he adored and admired his greatness, but on the other hand, also sometimes he got so frustrated and so disturbed by what Rambam said. And this is one example. When Maimonides says Korbanot are just a temporary concession, he says, and sometimes he would express himself very harshly, right? And this is one of those examples. This is rubbish, right? And remember, he's talking about Maimonides. Maimonides is saying garbage. They have healed the great hurt and great difficult lightly. They're not taking this whole thing seriously. And then he also has this very harsh critique of the Rambam. The table of the eternal is made polluted, right? I.e. the Beit HaMikdash, right? Maimonides, by saying that the Beit HaMikdash was just a temporary concession, God's home was made, was demeaned. So what is really going on with Korbanot? What is the story with Korbanot? So I want to make a suggestion. And I want to make a suggestion that's very counter to the way we think about these things. If you paid attention to Torah reading, the last 4 weeks was this elaborate, one would argue even obsessive discussion about the intricacies of the Beis Hamikdash, and you should build it that way, and put the walls this way, and the beams that way, and the ceiling should be made with 3 layers, and that's how you should weave it. And in case you didn't get it, let me repeat myself, right? It's repeated again, and Vayakel Pekudei, and then the clothing. This is how it should be sewed, and this is how it should be the size, and this is how you should wear it. This obsession about the minutia of the temple, of the clothing of the Kohanim. That's what happened the last couple of weeks. And
Rabbi
then
Katz,
this week,
give me one second, just a commercial announcement. I forgot to mention to people, and I apologize, that if you'd like to take advantage of our closed captions, and we thank Esther for typing them at the bottom of the screen, just press the CC button and the options will be there for you. But just to make sure that you're able to participate that way, if you'd like to be able to follow along with closed captions, just press the CC button. Sorry about that. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, so, right, like I said, you read the Parshiot the last 4 weeks, elaborate, a lengthy discussion about the minutia, every detail, right? Every nail, so to speak, is accounted for. And then this week we read about a korbanot. Now, normally, if you follow the sequence, you would say, okay, good. The previous parshiot were the build-up, and this week's parsha is the culmination. This week's parsha is the climax. We do all of that so that we can get to the korbanot. I want to turn things upside down. I want to argue the opposite. I want to argue that this week's parsha is the means and the previous parshiot were the end. God wanted us to become elevated people who appreciate the ineffable, right? We came out from Egypt as slaves, very material, right? All we think about is the next meal, make sure that our masters have their clothing. You lived in a very material world, and God wanted us to make us elevated people who can appreciate the intangible, right? The ineffable, a piece of art, right? You look at a piece of art, and it's not just pigment and and a board or a frame. You know that there's something greater that you're experiencing. So you know that there's something transcendent. I think that the korbanot was the means to bring the Jews to this Mecca of beauty. Because when someone is in the presence of beauty, they go to a place that takes them outside of their small, insignificant self. And I think that the korbanot this week are the means to what came in the previous weeks, which is why the amount of time spent on the Beis Hamikdash is so elaborate, so significant, because that's what was important. And I can support my argument from several texts within the Gemara, in the Halakha. When someone has to bring a sacrifice, how much was the person involved in the sacrifice? Anybody? Does anybody know? Well, let me tell you. What does the Midrash say? To the door of the tent of the meeting. That's a quote from the Pasuk at Pesach Oel Moed. What does that mean, the Midrash says? Meaning the owner must attend to getting it to the tent of the meeting, and that's it. They just need to show up there and they drop off the korbanot. They've done what they have to do. Why are they not involved in the slaughtering and accepting the blood and sprinkling the blood? Because that's not the point. The point is we wanted to kind of really kind of make you come to this incredibly sanctified and sacred space, right? Another Rashi, right? Rashi Me'ilah, Masechet Me'ilah says along the lines of, he reasons, Rashi says, that one who is liable to bring a sin or guilt offering. Let's remember, you did a sin, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, oh, that's where you bring a korban. So we think, okay, I'm going to bring the korban, and somehow I'll help with the slaughtering, I'll help with sprinkling the blood. That would expiate my transgression. Nope. He is liable and responsible for it until he brings it to the temple courtyard. And since he brought the animal to the courtyard, he is exempted from his responsibility. I love when I say something radical, which I occasionally do, as you all know in this audience, right? I know David is smiling a very strong smile. David, you're smiling too much. But I love when I say something and then I can show you, look, it is so clear. And this is so clear to me, right? The Torah does not expect the Jews who come to the Beis Hamikdash to do the nitty-gritty of the sacrifices, because that's not the point. That's the means. That's the kind of temptation to bring you to this Mecca of transcendence, right? And then one last source, again, from a Tosafot. So again, I'm not bringing some, 21st century modern Orthodox scholar. You can say, okay, they have this very weird approach. No. This is in the Rishonim, in the medieval commentators. Once he brought them to the Kohen, he has fulfilled his vow. So again, repeatedly, over and over and over again, we see that this is what it's about. The beauty, the standing in the presence of something so great that you feel as almost like an out-of-body experience. I mean, we live across the park at we used to live on 85th, now we're on 92nd and Broadway, like neighbors to the Met. Every time we go to the Met, I mean, we're a little bit obsessive. Our Avi was 10 days old when he was at the Met for the first time, because Avi was born, but we wanted to go to some show and we went to the Met. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. You go to certain shows and you just kind of feel like there's something sacred in this experience. You're standing in the presence of something that you can't touch, you can't explain. It is something greater than you. And that is what we're learning this week. We're learning in this week's Parsha, like a minor version of Maimonides. The korbanot are not the end. They're the means to push us to go to spaces that take us out of our daily routine. And I'll jump ahead and then I'll add another piece to my presentation, which is that I do believe that alongside B'tei Midrash, right, the rabbis say that today the contemporary Beis Hamikdash is the shul, where we learn Torah. I believe that the museums are the miniature B'tei Mikdash of our time. This is where we go to feel different than our routine. See something transcendent, see something above what we daily experience. And again, for me, perhaps because I'm a chassid, that's when I encounter HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When I'm standing in awe of a piece of art that overwhelms me, like Ribbono Shel Olam, I feel close. That's all, just feeling close, and that's it. In addition to the spiritual value of art, I also think it can enhance tremendously our learning and our davening and just our every religious experience. And what I want to do is give you a couple of examples of how our learning Torah can be enhanced by art, as well as our davening can be enhanced by art. So Oh, everybody knows this painting, right? Michelangelo, painting of creation. I cannot begin to tell you how much spiritual inspiration I find from this little section of the painting, right? Here is a, right? To me, this section of the painting tells me all about what I'm here for. You know what I'm here for? I'm here to bridge this gap between God and humanity. We need to close the gap and get closer. But I also know that we'll never close the gap. We'll get closer to God, God will get closer to us, but we'll never fully close it up. And that is, for me, the essence of what being in this world is. So here you have an artist, whether he meant it or not, I don't know. To me, when I think of what I need to do in this world, oh, Michelangelo reminds me of what I need to do in this world. I am going to go on a side tangent just for 2 seconds. You have to indulge me for this. I once used this painting for my class in my note. For the students or for a class, and I explain it to you. Obviously, for the students, I had to cover up the exposed body of Adam. So this goes back 30 years ago. I was not a computer expert, but my son was kind of well versed in computers, and he somehow developed some kind of technology that put a patch on the lower half of Adam's body. I come to my note, I come to school, and I make a Xerox of that page, and the Xerox does not record the patch. And I tell Mrs. Cross, you see the difference between a Hasidic printer and a modern Orthodox printer, you know? The Hasidic printer covers the inappropriate stuff, and a modern Orthodox printer insists on revealing it. So it was this little funny moment about this picture. So every time I see this picture, I say, be careful where you print it, you know? Anyway, moving on, another couple of examples of art. So, maybe I guess most of you know me already, so I grew up in Satmar. I'm not a big Nach person. David, you've heard me say this many times in the class. Tova, in Satmar, we don't learn Nach, we learn Torah, and then we jump to Gemara, right? Nachar for the hoi polloi. And I'm not a big Nach person. One book in Nach that I love, that I cannot stop reading, is the Book of Job, right? It's such a deep, challenging book, and no matter how many times you read it over and over and over again, but what is the answer? Why really does bad things happen to good people? Now, I don't know how many of you have spent a significant amount of time on the book, but if you did, you will know that the biggest challenge is the end of the book, right? The friends come along and they try to say, oh, it's because of this, it's because of that, and it's because of that. And each time Job is horrified. How can you say that? Oh, because I did bad things? Are you kidding? I'm the biggest Balsadaka in the world. Because one day I'll be good. Oh, that's why I lost my family, because one day I'll be happy. He's just outraged. What happened at the end? God comes to him and talks to him for 3 chapters, and Job said, got it. Does anybody know? You can unmute yourself. What does God do in those 3 chapters? If anybody cares to unmute themselves. What does God talk about? Anybody? What happens in those 3 chapters? God goes on and on and on about the beauty and miracle of nature. Right? 3 chapters of, wow, have you noticed this? Have you noticed that? Have you paid attention to that? And I'm like, okay, and how does that help Job's problem? For me, and I teach Job in the yeshiva, I taught it at my note, this is what God is telling Job. Jackson Pollock. What's the beauty about this piece? This piece teaches us to enjoy the transcendent beauty of chaos. That's the answer. God is not trying to tell Job, oh, I'll tell you why. That would be incredibly outrageous to Job. Oh, your family died because of this or that. That's why he killed my children? God tells Job, that's not the way to go about the world. The world is a chaotic place. For most of us, it's hard to appreciate the beauty in that complexity. And then someone comes along with Jackson Pollock, and again, I am obsessed. I can sit in front of this piece for hours and hours and hours just to appreciate. And one time I'll follow the yellow throughout the painting. Then I'll kind of identify the blue and say, wow, look how beautiful. So when I teach Job, I say, this is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu said. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Eov, if you want to be a happy Oved Hashem, you need to learn how to do this. And when you learn how to do this, all of a sudden, you know how to deal with pain. You're not pretending that pain is justified. You'll never again go to the hospital to a friend who lost a child or to a friend who is suffering from an illness and say, maybe because, or no, maybe because. Let me try you to kind of see the other piece of this world. This is a world of pain. This is a world of complexity, but there is beauty in that. So to me, Jackson Pollock is the next Perush on Sefer Eov. If I'm going to publish a book with commentary on Job, this would be one. Let me give you another example. Here you have two paintings of the Akedah story. The left is Caravaggio, and the right is Rembrandt. Both of them read the same. Let me kind of make it a little bit smaller so you can see both in the same time. Yeah. Both of them read the same text. And if we had time, but I don't want to keep people for too late, we can unpack for 5 minutes the variety of differences in these two paintings. They are telling us different stories, different commentary. Look at the writer Abraham's Rembrandt's Abraham. Look at the left at Caravaggio's Abraham, right? A whole different facial expression. Look at Isaac at Caravaggio. Look at Isaac at Rembrandt. Look at the angel. Look at the light in the background, right? These are two, this is Lahavdil Elef Alpha Avdalot. Obviously, they're not Jewish commentators, but this is the modern version of an Ibn Ezra on the Akedah and a Ramban on the Akedah. All of a sudden, there's such different stories, right? In Caravaggio's hand, Abraham holds onto the knife. In Rembrandt's story, the knife is flying out of his hand, right? Caravaggio's Abraham is somewhat of a meanie. In Rembrandt's Abraham, he is an old man who is somewhat lost. You feel almost like he's not sure what is going on. And I can go on and on and on. But my point is, this is another layer of commentary on the Torah that real modern Orthodoxy needs to embrace so much more. And to me, this is my home, where I feel that it happens the most at Chovevei Torah, where there's a recognition that there's not Orthodoxy and modernity, but no. Caravaggio can help us understand better the story of the Akedah. Here's a little quiz for you. This is a Matisse. Which parsha, which story does this Matisse help us understand?
Adam and Eve.
Adam and Eve. Thank you. Tova? Was that Tova? I just didn't know.
Yeah.
Yes, right?
I said Bereshit.
Bereshit, and then Tova followed up and said Adam and Eve. When you think of the Midrash that says that Adam and Eve were two people in one, look at this Matisse. I see two people there and they're one. It's like just incredible. And all of a sudden I have this beautiful visual with the color, right? And you look at the, these are adults, right? You look at the upper half of the body. Are those breasts? Are those just color? And the ambiguity is what the Torah wanted us to experience when thinking of Adam and Eve as one person. Imagine if we can publish a Chumash and put this picture side by side to the parsha, like, oh, that's what it looked like. Amazing, right? And again, the color is so much to say, why is what looks like the female yellow? What was the male meant to look like blue? And then what does it mean that both heads are black, so to speak? There's no doubt that the colors are deliberate, right? Then you look at the two flower pots on the two sides. Is one masculine and one feminine? I think one is masculine, one is feminine. I mean, I can go on and give shiur just on this one. And finally, okay, yeah. So that's in terms of the Chumash. Now let's go to the Sidur for a few minutes, and with that I'll wrap up. Why do you think the Sidur is so fat? Why are our Sidurim so thick? What happened? Over the years of history, what happened? What do you think? I'm sorry, Tova?
Things were added to.
Exactly. And why were things added to it?
Because it came in different times and different generations and with different poets.
And I'll add one more thing. And prayer became boring. So you have to add something new to make it exciting again, right? And boring is inevitable, right? After 20 years, the new thing becomes boring. So then the next person says, oh, let me add Shishal Yom. And then the next person comes on and says, oh, I'll add Ayimamin, right? And they keep on adding and adding and adding and adding. And that's what we end up with. I have a solution. And the davening ends up taking forever.
And it's usher to subtract. We're liturgical
Exactly,
hoarders.
right? It becomes an integral part of the tefillah. If you take it off, you're no longer Orthodox and you're out, right? And davening takes forever. I have a suggestion. Let's add art. Davening will take the same, but it will be differently meaningful. And I just wanted to share with you a project that I had one year during the Aseret Yemei Teshuvah. I shared on my Facebook wall each day a different artist, and just try to kind of show that to me, that artist somehow has a message about Teshuvah. Now, it could be that for you it would be a different artist, because these are so many artists who say so many things, but there's such an incredible variety. So let me just kind of walk you through 6 or 7 of those examples, right? So this is obviously, right? Edward Munch. To me, Edward Munch is the visual commentary on Shema Kolenu, right? If you say Shema Kolenu at Slichot and you have this image like, God Almighty, I am lost. I am terrible, right? The blue, the orange, the gray, the face. This is Shema Kolenu with a little commentary. Salvador Dali, melting clocks. What do we say in Slichot every time? Harvest is past, summer is gone, but we have not been saved. Time has gone by, time has melted, time has dissipated. And again, I'm a big Dali fan. If you look at Dali's melting clocks, time is going away. And again, imagine a machzor where you have, God, time has gone by with a Dali next to it. Like, yes, I see what it means when time flies by. I'll skip this one. This one is going to take a long time. This is a triptych from Bosch. We can talk about this forever. I see that, David, you know about it. It's an incredibly, I remember when I was in the, I think it was in the Prada. I think the Bosch is in the Prada in Spain. And Sherry and I are very different art connoisseurs. Sherry, when she goes to a museum, my wife Sherry, then she has to see everything. I get overwhelmed and then can do more and run out. After I saw this Bosch, I saw Sherry, this is it for me for the day. There's so much going on here and so much punishment, decay, and so on and so forth. But whatever. Frida Kahlo, right?
Yes.
With her medical, her medical spine, right?
Yeah.
Some of you might know the story of Frida Kahlo, right? Frida Kahlo was involved in an accident at a very young age, and she broke her spine and never got fully healed. And she was in incredible pain for all of her life, right? And this is one of those beautiful paintings, right? Where she has this, artificial spine and her body's really falling apart, right? Kol atzmotai tomarna Hashem mi kamocha. All my bones should proclaim God who is like you. When you think about how crucial bones are, and look at this, this person's, some of their vertebrae, some of their bones were broken, and all of a sudden it's over. Like, God, you start thinking about each and every limb, and thank you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, my hands are okay. Thank you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, my spine is not broken. Imagine a Sidur that has Frida Kahlo's Kalatzmosai side by side. You see what it means when the bones are not able to praise HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Lucian Freud, right? Lucian Freud was very famous for depicting the humanity in all its gore and all its, right? Look at the pasuk. From head to foot, no spot is sound, all bruises and welts and festering sores, not pressed out, not bound up, not softened with oil, right? You look at him and you say, peel off all the, mascara, all the faces that we put on. This is how we feel when we come to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We feel naked, we feel revealed, we feel broken. And again, I can go on and on and on with examples of each of these that can help us understand better. And I'm going to say two last things. And I ask you to read the essay because I can't do justice to it. You know what? I'll do a show of hands quickly for those of you online. How many of you have seen the Book of Mormon? Nobody? Or nobody wants to admit it? Okay. Okay. What?
I never saw it.
Okay. So I've seen the Book of Mormon. And whatever you heard about the Book of Mormon is true. It's very crass. It's very graphic and all of that. But I believe deep down, it has an incredibly spiritual message. And I'll say it in very few words. I mean, I don't want to, I'll tell you, I can't do it without giving away the story. So if you can, there's a link, I'll put a link to the source sheet, and you can find, I wrote a lengthy essay about it. And actually, apropos of next week, it connects to Purim. It is a message about how religion needs to respond to cultural norms in order to survive and thrive. It's an incredibly fascinating play that, again, it is crass, it is very graphic, not nudity and stuff. It's just kind of more the words, and the words are very subversive and all of that, but there is something incredibly deep. And then finally, last point I will say is that here is one last one. And this one is obvious to everybody almost. I think you'll guess it right away, perhaps. Anybody familiar with this one, or anybody know what this is trying to illustrate?
Oh, 4 types of children.
And what is the message that the artist is trying to convey?
Everybody has a little bit of one of the 4 signs.
Exactly. Satmar Rebbe once said, we say at the Agada, Echad Chacham, Echad Rasha, Echad Tam, Echad She'ena Yodei Lisho. Satmar Rebbe thought that grammatically it should have been Rishon Chacham, Sheni Rasha, Shlishi Tam, Revi She'ena Yodei Lisho. You know what Satmar Rebbe said? It's not describing 4 people. It's describing the same person in different modes. I don't know about you, but I so relate to that. I'm not always in the same mode. There are days when I wake up and I feel totally like a Tom. There are days when I wake up like a Rasha, not a Rasha, but I'm angry and frustrated. And there are days when I wake up like a Chacham. And the Torah talks to each of our modes. The Torah has something to say on the day when I wake up as a Chacham. The Torah has something to say on the day that I wake up when I'm a She'eno Yodei Lisho. And the artist, this is an Israeli artist, Reisinger, says exactly what Ruth says. This is not 4 people. If you look closely, you'll see variations of the same person put together differently, right? The same person, the same Ysoscher Katz. One day we'll wake up and we'll feel so Haredi and so excited about Frumkate and all that. And the next day I'll wake up and say, Haredi Judaism has caused so much pain for people, so much suffering. I can't bear Haredi Judaism. And then there are days when I'll wake up and I'm a Tom. I'm saying, I don't know how this makes sense. And the beautiful message of the Haggadah is, don't walk away on those days. That is a day when we have something to say to you as well. I don't know how better to describe YCT. YCT is this painting. If I had a say in the logo, which I don't, I would say this should be our logo. Our logo is a deep belief that there is nobody that belongs outside. There is no mode, there's no state of mind, there's no person who does not belong. There's something for everybody and anybody. So with that, I'll conclude. And hopefully, if you know any funders who want to fund my either Chumash and art project or Sidur and art project, let me know. And I'm only half facetious because I really believe that it would really bring a dimension to our Torah, our dimension to our Avodat Hashem that is missing right now. The ability to say, oh, that piece of art, that represents my Mot HaKadosh Baruch Hu today. And again, like I said in the beginning, I think that parallel to the Beis Medrash, museums are the mini Beit Mikdash Ma'atz today. Museums is where we should compel ourselves to go every now and then, to go away from our routine and feel something greater and outside of ourselves. Yasher Koach, everybody.
Katz, thank you. I'll offer, I'll just say that, you've been involved with this project with the Main Institute. One of our students, Veer Kahana, has been working on bringing artists together with members of clergy to think deeper about what the art represents, what the religious side has to say about it. Can you maybe say a word about that? I know you were in conversation this past Sunday, actually, with, I think, with Toby
Myself? Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is incredible. Thank you for mentioning. So the Veer Kahana is a student at Chovevei. His own life story is fascinating. His father is Rabbi Ronnie Kahana, who has unfortunately been paralyzed for many, many years. And for those of you who are interested to learn more about his father for a moment, the New York Times actually had a op-ed. What do they call the movie op-eds? There's like they're a video op-ed.
Like a vlog. I'm gonna find the link for it and post
If
it
you
in
can
the
find
chat.
the link on his father, and it's very powerful. It's done by De Veer's sister. So my point is that the entire family cares deeply about art. So De Veer found 52 artists and 52 rabbis, and he paired each rabbi and artist up with a parsha. So you'll do a piece of art for one parsha, and the two of you are chavrusis, and then they do a presentation in which the artist presents their art and the rabbi presents their teaching related to the art. And as Rabbi Berman pointed out, this Sunday I did a presentation with Toby Khan. We had close to 100 people, and it was just an incredible experience. An artist who has done incredible art talk about how his art informs Vayikra, and some of what I share with you today, I also spoke about how for me Vayikra is about the appreciation of art. Again, you can look it up. It's called the Amman Institute. For every week, there is such fascinating art, different modes of art. There's painting, there's sculpture. It's really an incredible project that he took on all by himself. It's not a cheap project. All the participants obviously are dedicating from their time, and they're compensated very respectfully. And it's all shouldered by De Veer. It's incredible.
Yeah. I just posted links to both the New York Times piece as well as to the Main Institute in the chat for everyone. Before, I think it would be nice to just open things up to a little bit of conversation. We have a few minutes left. Before we do that, I want to call everyone's attention to two upcoming events that we have. First, I want to thank Rabbi Katz for sharing your Torah today, and you'll be sharing your Torah again this coming Sunday evening at an event that YCT is hosting in solidarity with the situation in Ukraine. I had it, there it is. Hold on one second. Let me share this for everyone to see. You can find this on the YCT website. I'll put the link in a moment, but it's a program featuring Professor Susanna Heschel, Rabbi David Ma'ayan, and Rabbi Katz himself, focusing on Torah that comes and came out of Ukraine in past generations. We have about 25 sponsor organizations altogether joining us, and you can register right here and join us. That's Sunday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern, and we'll put that link into the chat in a moment. The other thing is, of course, that we have YCT's annual evening of celebration, which is going to be taking place on Sunday, April 3rd. And this is really an opportunity to celebrate, to think about what our musmachim are doing, taking that Torah, as Rabbi Katz described, from this unique institution, bringing it out into the world, and then also hearing from Rabbi Linzer, as he, in conversation with Abigail Pogrobin, describes his vision for the future of YCT as we continue to train these rabbis and bring our Torah to the world in oh so many ways. So I'm going to share that with you now as well, and encourage, if anyone has any thoughts, please, b'vakasha, feel free to just unmute yourself and share with Rabbi Katz and with everyone.
Well, I'm so excited to bring to our Seder that new learning of a Katz. I need to find that picture.
I'll share with you.
I'm really excited to, I think my sister-in-law, who's an educator, she's the head of school in Nashville, head of school at the Jewish Day School in Nashville, Tennessee. Really, the whole child, like she's really about the whole child. And I think this is going to be very powerful.
I think that also speaks to the inclusivity philosophy. But talking about Vayikra and the Beit HaMikdash and the beauty. I have a few thoughts about it. One, I think that the Mishkan and the and then subsequently the Beit Mikdash came as a result of the Egel, because it was a need. The beauty of the Beit Mikdash and the awesomeness of the costume, the dress, and it is also something that is a human need. But the korbanot have a different, to come and bring your animal, and that's how all the Leviim and the Kohanim were fed. So no matter whether you're coming in thankfulness or coming in repentance, but it comes with an act of chesed.
Rabbi Katz, you're muted.
You're muted.
You'll appreciate it, Tova, and I'll share that with you perhaps later, and if not, remind me Monday night. Rambam in the end of Hilchos Matanot Kehuna has this beautiful lineup how he explains how the Kohanim are taken care of, and everything is provided for them, right? So they have wool, that's why we have to give some of our wool to the Kohanim, right? They have oil, that's why we have Trumas and Maasros, and they have meat because the Korbanot. So exactly. In fact, we're going to Pearlstone for Pesach every year. And this year, one of the things that I'm going to do is talk about how the rabbis took the korban chagiga that we bring every Yom Tov and replaced it with tzedakah, precisely because that's the purpose of the korban, provide for those who don't have and serve the community, and this is our responsibility to support them. But it's literally what you're saying, korbanot have a tzedakah component, and when we needed to identify the essence, we're left with tzedakah, even if we don't have korbanot. Beautiful, Tova. Thank you.
And I'd love to talk to you about a sitter that has on.
Okay. Anybody else? Any thoughts? Any reflections? Any responses? Yeah.
Rabbi Katz, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to share it, and some of you must probably know this, that Rav Kook famously went once to the London Museum, and he saw a Rembrandt. And those of you who are familiar with Rembrandt makes tremendous use of light. And Rav Kook, in his audacious style, said, oh, there's a midrash which says that on the day when HaKadosh Baruch Hu created light, it was so overwhelming that God decided to hide it and leave it for when Mashiach comes for tzaddikim to appreciate that light. And he said a Rembrandt was able to tap into that light and give such a beautiful expression for light. Now, if you think about it, for Rav Kook, Rembrandt was able to tap into what was set aside for tzaddikim. That's how he saw art. Art can do sometimes what tzaddikim do for us. Just incredible. Just incredible.
Okay, I'd like to say something if I may.
I'm getting nervous, David.
No, I'm not nervous. I don't exactly know how to put it into words.
Sure.
I don't know if the other people, I think Rabbi Katz knows my background.
Mm-hmm. You muted yourself suddenly, David. David, you muted yourself suddenly.
I don't know if other people on this call know my background as well. You know, you grew up Satmar. I, a few generations back, grew up Volozhin.
Okay? I feel for you.
Okay. Now, you know, my grandfather was Mordechai Kaplan, and his father was a chevruta of the Netziv. Okay, back in the old country. I've grown up with, I grew up with that Judaism, if you are an artist, I'm talking about Jews, if Jews are artists or are musicians, they should express themselves Jewishly. In other words, Judaism is not a separate thing. It's all part and parcel of who we are. Now, I have gone to the Sistine Chapel several times, once when I was a teenager and once when I was older. Experienced different things when I go there. The Sistine Chapel is a church. Let's call a spade a spade. The Sistine Chapel is a church. When you look at creation at the Sistine Chapel, and you really can't look like this, so you use a mirror, and you look at, can't carry a hand mirror, so you can look up and spend time looking at these things. You get all sorts of wonderful spiritual feelings. You might not. Intellectually, though, Michelangelo's conception of creation is not Jewish, it's not Christian. It has nothing to do with Tanakh. What's this finger thing? Is that how God creates? God creates through speech. So incorporating pictures like that, which is just a photograph or a picture of something which is located, the original for which is very different from an illustration, and incorporating that in a Tanakh, I would be rather cautious. I mean, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work for me.
Right,
okay,
right.
I'm just going to leave it at that.
No. That's important. I mean, I think
I'm not easy. I can't articulate it.
No. You're articulating very well. That the fact that we will incorporate art doesn't give us a license to incorporate everything, and origin is important, and origin matters. The one thing that I will kind of qualify is that the Torah does use building language, right? Vayetzar et Adam afar min hadama, which, according to a lot of Meforshim, is described as, using, so to speak, kind of metaphorically, God's hands to shape a person out of the mud. So I think Michelangelo was really thinking about that pasuk, and he avoided Christian motifs, davka, because he didn't want to get into that area, but instead builds off of that pasuk, which talks explicitly about creating a person out of the mud, right? And you have that image almost like a sculpture creating a person. But I think your point is very important. Your point is very important, and that not every art, is valid. And it goes to the bigger question that we struggle with today with musicians, right? Musicians who have sullied their reputation. Should we use their music, right? And the answer is no. So yeah, I definitely couldn't agree with you more. The funny thing, the version of what you're saying is that the Chassam Sofer said, never read a sefer that doesn't have an askama, never read a sefer that doesn't have a probation from a rabbi. If I do my sefer, I'm going to go to rabbis and say, are you agreeing that this is the appropriate one, and maybe I'll come to you, David. I think that you feel I really seriously mean that. You feel very passionately, and I've learned from you a tremendous amount during the years that we learned in terms of your David, it's interesting. I think I come from the opposite world of where you come from, and we're meeting in the center place, and we need to kind of dialogue with each other so we can both be on the straight and narrow, which is why I really love your pushback. Really, I see you really as someone say, Ysoscher, don't get carried away too much. I've been there, So
I'm imagining I'm imagining that you're coming closer, but I don't know if you'll ever
Exactly.
actually touch.
David and Ysoscher are holding your fingers, and in the opposite direction, David is pushing Ysoscher, and Ysoscher is pushing David. But really, your feedback is incredible, David, as always. So
Amazing.
thank you.
Rabbi Katz, I was, Ruthie asked me if I'd ever heard this shir before from you. And to be honest, I was aware of it, but I never actually heard it. And
Thank you.
I have to say, in all its glory, this is amazing. So much to think about
Thank
and so
you.
much to take
Thank
from
you.
here in terms of our own
Thank you.
religious growth, understanding, certainly a little bit of Torah for Pesach coming up, but really
Thank you.
that sense of looking around the world, appreciating the human ingenuity and creativity and how that brings us back to our own sense of Avodat Hashem,
Thank you.
and what that means to be part of an institution that promotes this and thinks about that as well. So thank you all for being here. Hopefully we'll see you on Sunday night, and we'll see you again on April 3rd. And everyone, give a big round of applause. Yes, Aaron, you had the right idea to Rabbi Katz.
Thank you.
Thank you
you
very
all so
much. And Purim
Thank
Sameach.
you. Purim Sameach to everybody as
David,
well.
Aaron,
too.
Tova, Milt, good to see you all. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye, everybody.